the White Shadow, also known as the Shadow of the World Tree, and Suho continue their conversation about Suho's path. It commends Suho's existence, stating that Suho doesn't understand or fathom the magnificence of his own being. To be the son of the Shadow Monarch, born with the ruler's authority within his soul, the Shadow explained in detail why it is so important. Retelling a story we've heard many times before, the Shadow tells the origins of the rulers and monarchs, how the absolute being split the primordial light and darkness into fragments. The fragments of light, being the rulers, were made to protect the world, and the fragments of darkness, being the monarchs, were created to destroy. The absolute being made the two forces fight for his entertainment. However, after learning that they were mere pawns, the rulers rebelled and killed their creator. But that's not the story the White Shadow intended to tell. Before the rebellion, there was one sole ruler who did not join the rebellion. A fragment of light known as Ashborne. He was known for his undying loyalty to his master. He was known as the greatest fragment of light. Wary of both the rulers and monarchs who had grown enough to threaten his life, the absolute being created a fail-safe plan. He implanted his most loyal servant Ashborne with the power to return everything to nothingness. However, this power should never have been awakened or existed. Although he made these precautions, the absolute being never thought that his pawns would actually rebel against their king. So when the absolute being met his end, the ninth monarch, who never should have existed, embodying both primordial light and darkness, was born. The first irregular. This was no ordinary event. As expressed by the White Shadow, the primordial light and primordial darkness are two attributes that could never become one. So when Ashborne, the Shadow Monarch, was born, he essentially became himself, a fragment of Iterim. Although Ashborne was merely a fraction of what used to be the combination of both light and darkness. Even with that fraction of power after the absolute being's death, Ashborne essentially became the only existence qualified to replace the absolute being. Which is why, although both the monarchs and the rulers feared him and his potential, they also revered him. In layman's terms, the moment the fragment of light and darkness merged, Ashborne became an absolute existence that could overwhelm everyone else by his mere presence alone. A being that could protect the absolute being. Even if all his creations turned against him, Ashborne could fend and crush them all if they attacked simultaneously. This is proven even now with Jinwoo's performance against the outer gods. That's also why the most surprising aspect of it all was that a mere weak human was strong and capable enough to contain a fragment of Itarim. But at last, even with his great power, Jinwoo could not reach the shadow of the World Tree. A king who defied death and White Shadow that did not were two existences that could never meet, which is why the Shadow approached Suho. Suho was different, not a fragment of Itarim, but a being born from one. If Jinwoo was a being of both primordial light and darkness merged into one, Suho was a being born with the light and darkness already combined, which is why from a young age he could use ruler's authority and also traverse between both the world of life and death. Similar outcomes, but different principles. The Shadow goes on to tell Suho about his birth, about how Heian nearly died giving birth. Although Suho had learned about the struggles his mother went through during her pregnancy, he was never given a real, in-depth explanation about it. When Heian was giving birth to Suho, Jinwoo had to continue giving her holy water of life potions. After taking a potion, the mere existence of Suho being within her brought her vessel to its limit, nearly killing her and forcing Jinwoo to remend her vessel and feed her another potion. That's one of the reasons why Heian was so powerful. Looking back on it, it was a truly critical moment in Jinwoo's life. Had he lost his wife or unborn son, who knows what he would have done. With the power to resurrect, who's to say that Jinwoo wouldn't have broken his rule and brought Heian back to life? And why stop at her to prevent anyone he cared about from ever leaving his side? He may have even brought back a close friend or more until he turned the entire world into the world of repose. Listening to the hypothetical, Suho agreed with the shadow. Looking back, he finally understood why his father had so few friends. Even though he was insanely popular and very charismatic, he never let too many people get close to him. Looking at the shadow, Suho asked it why it told him this story. The shadow reminds him that before the story, it asked Suho what he wanted to do with his life. What path did he want to take? As if waiting, the system reappeared before Suho, still counting his advancement points. Unlike before, Suho experienced an epiphany and realized that these points weren't mere numbers but an illustration of what his path ahead could be. The shadow asked Suho if he would choose to remain on the path to become the monarch of destruction as planned. Looking at Suho for an answer, Suho gazed back at the shadow and told it his decision.